inside my own world of make-believe.
Oh, baby.
Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright.
Come on,
it's
let's
hard
go.
to breathe, but that's alright.
Oh my god. Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy with our Borderlands 3 video. It has been a hot minute. I have been playing actually a fair bit of Borderlands 3 on stream. I started a brand new playthrough of an Amara and was just starting out fresh, leveled from 1 to 72. And while I was doing that, I came across an interaction that I don't think I was ever aware of, that is actually really cool, and it works on every character. However, I wanted to do this on Amara because I love Amara and she's got some really interesting synergies with this. But we're gonna break down this kind of like new mechanic. It's new to me. I do think that this has been known for a while now. Just about everything in this game has been known, but I never messed around with it, and it is really, really cool. So I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So this interaction has to do with the Dark Armies. These are SMGs that you can farm in the arms race content, and I've made a build with them before, but I didn't realize that what these SMGs do is they snapshot the buffs or the damage that you have on your character when you swap to them. So basically, if we have, in this example, we're using Amara with a spiritual driver. When Amara is running around with the driver, she gets increased gun damage. If we slide with something like a snowdrift, we can get Amara's max gun damage. And that is something that is very hard to utilize properly. I've done it in the past with builds where we like shoot a rocket launcher as we're sliding at the peak of our slide to one-shot bosses, and like that's super cool, but it's a hard playstyle to use because you're flying around constantly. With this setup, what you do is you slide really fast once, and then you're good. In the middle of your slide, you're going to swap to a Dark Army, and the Dark Army swap, the SMG that gets pulled out from that, is going to inherit the damage bonuses from your driver and your other things while it's floating up in the air. By the way, if you're not aware, the Dark Army is an SMG that summons drones that fly around, and these drones are pretty interesting. So while these drones are active and they're flying around, they deal, I think it's like 160% of your weapon's card damage as kinetic damage. They do not deal elemental damage. So if you're holding a cryo one, you're going to be doing kinetic damage. If you're holding a radiation one, you're going to be doing kinetic damage. However, when you reload and throw your weapon, as they're a TDR, whenever you reload for the next, like, I think it's 3 seconds, they deal their damage as elemental damage, but it's 666% increased elemental damage. So whenever you reload, all of a sudden, these things start hitting for a ton of damage. And Amara's got a lot of things that give her fast swap speed and fast reload speed. And we're going to basically be not really shooting at enemies. You do need to shoot a little bit at enemies just because you don't actually proc the skill sustainment from the drones. At least you can still like get healing from them if they shoot through ties that bind, because that'll deal elemental damage. But like the actual drones flying around, they don't heal you. So you do need to shoot at enemies every once in a while. Basically, one shot will full heal you with sustainment, with like end game damage scaling. But basically, we're just going to be running around and reloading this gun, and your drones are going to be dealing ridiculous amounts of damage. And they have a built-in like mechanic where they'll kind of shoot where your crosshair is at. So you do have a way to kind of target their damage. And then with this build, we're going to be casting Ties That Bind, and the drones will shoot through Ties That Bind. Ties That Bind, if you're not aware, gets mayhem scaling, does a ton of damage, and is going to help these drones that aren't great at AoE damage basically clear like the takedown very quickly. And that is kind of the general premise of the build. There's a little bit more intricacies that we'll get into, but that is the idea. We're going to snapshot them once. You don't need to snapshot them ever again. Snapshot them once, and then just go run around, reload chucking into the air, and these drones will deal all of the damage for you. So now let's get into specifics. So I am using an EMP5 as my swap weapon. If you did not know, the EMP5, while you're holding it, and while you're like running around with it, is going to give you increased movement speed. So we're going to be getting a ton of movement speed while we're holding this and sliding with the driver, which we're going to want for our swap. The other thing that you're going to want with your driver before you do the swap, the one thing you want to make sure you're doing is that you have your full stacks of mindfulness. With the driver, you basically just need to cast your action skill. I usually ties the bind and then kill the enemy to end it. But like, for example, right now I have no stacks of mindfulness. When I do this cast, I'm going to get my stacks of mindfulness to build up. Once I'm at 25, I can do the slide and swap. There was not a great example because I hit a wall when I was pulling out my weapon, but you're going to want to try to pull out your weapon as you're kind of at the like peak of your slide, like something like that. Obviously, you'd want to have full stacks of mindfulness when you do it, but once you do that, you're kind of done. Now, for the anoint on the dark armies, there's a lot of anoints that don't work. The majority of anoints don't work. Some of them do. The one that does work for us is going to be next to mags. This isn't going to work on your action skill. So like, for example, if I have drones out right now and I do an action skill, the drones that are currently out will not get that bonus damage. However, when I reload, those drones that are up will then inherit those next two mags, and they get it permanently. So once you reload once, you don't need to like reload again. You're still going to want to because of the extra elemental damage that you'll imbue your weapons with, but they're going to get permanently 100% additional bonus damage as another element. So I've got a cryo one with ASE corrosive, a corrosive one with ASE corrosive, and a radiation one with ASE incendiary. Just, you know, corrosive with corrosive is nice for like doing Wotan stuff. And then the other like mixed elements are nice to have for like mobbing or whatever scenario you need. The anoint on the crater really doesn't matter. This one just dropped with me for fadeaway weapon damage. So that's what I've got on it. Now, the next thing that's really important is the revolter. Y'all know the revolter is one of the strongest shields in the game. Well, I mean, it is the strongest shield in the game. I am not sure if the drones inherit the 50% increased fire rate from this, but they do inherit the 200% shock. And when I say inherent, as in like when you activate your action skill, the drones will get the 200%. They're not permanently, at least from my testing, they're not permanently getting revolter damage. So you do need to keep your action skill being cast to continuously get this damage. But if you have low cooldowns, which we get pretty easily on Amara, you can keep up the revolter 200% bonus shock all the time. And then the last thing we're going to be using is a grenade. The coolest grenade for this build would be like a rad hunter seeker, probably, because the hunter seekers are also kind of like drones and you could play into the theme of the build. I just have a mesmer on. We're going ASE rad just because rad explosions in this game are very strong. They're going to help with some of the limited clear speed that these have inherently without ties that bind. For the class mod, the main thing that you're going to want is a driver with +3 to mindfulness so that you can get the full gun damage bonus when you're sliding from this. So 6 out of 3 into mindfulness is super important. And then we're going to be using a Snowdrift Victory Rush. You could use a Toboggan, but the Toboggan amp does not work for the drones, so it's kind of pointless. And then you're missing out on the whole Victory Rush thing. So Victory Rush is going to give us more movement speed and more damage, which is awesome. I like the rolls on it aren't super important. I would just try to look for some action skill cooldown rate because having your action skill up all the time on this build is going to make it feel a lot better to play. For the skill tree, starting in red tree, we're going to put 5 points into anima. This is important because it gives us 100% increased status effect duration. The status effect duration is important because while we are dotted via our driver, we're going to have more mindfulness. This is just a higher uptime on our mindfulness buff and our damage buff from the driver. So definitely want 5 out of 5 here. Steady hands, handling, accuracy. Tempest is great because it gives us more elemental damage. The drones do not get infusions. There's not really any point in putting a point into infusion. Just put 1 point into wildfire to go down. I get dread for some extra gun damage, which technically the drones can snapshot. I don't go deep well because my whole goal is to reload the gun as often as possible. It doesn't really need to be like a fully drained mag, but we just don't want more mag size. It's not like a higher mag size gives the SMG damage more damage, if I'm understanding it correctly. So like it's not like a traditional TDR where if you had more mag, you'd get more damage. So we're not going deep well. Indiscriminate does not work for the drones. However, it does work for our weapon. And if our weapon is bouncing around and hitting more enemies, it's going to give us more healing, which is why we're rocking 3 points indiscriminate. But the main reason we're in red tree is just to grab 1 point in sustainment. There are ways that we could go about not having to use sustainment, but the quality of life from just 1 point here to instantly heal whenever you shoot is pretty massive. I just put 2 points into Catharsis for some extra clear speed. This skill can down you if you're close to an enemy, so be careful with it. If you don't want to put 2 points there, you can just put 2 points into Wildfire. Next, let's do Blue Tree. Blue Tree, fast hands is super important. You really want good reload speed and also weapon swap speed. The faster we can swap to our weapon, if it takes a while to pull out our weapon, we're not going to be able to pull it out at the max like pinnacle of our slide. And so 3 points into fast hands is definitely a must. I put 1 point into do harm, 1 point into violent tapestry for those rush stacks, and then 4 out of 5 into alacrity for the extra reload speed, transcend for the extra accuracy crit damage. 2 points in restless is fine. If you're feeling like you need more cooldown, you definitely could put more points here. We are using expedite plus ascendant, which is going to give us a lot of cooldown on our action skill whenever we're killing enemies through ties. So I felt fine putting 2 points there. Then we're going to pick up from rest for more damage, laid bare so that we get more debuff on enemies, and then wrath for more gun damage. Revenant, one of the strongest skills in the game, easy pickup, and then Avatar so that we can get 2 stacks of our action skill or 2 stacks of our ties that bind. In the purple tree, we're mainly just here to get expedite. We are going to pick up heavy rain for more projectile speed and more splash damage. While these weapons themselves inherently do not deal splash damage, a lot of the effects that they're going to be causing will deal splash damage. So for example, the weapons can proc Hollow Point, which causes an explosion that's splash damage. If they proc a Rat Explosion, that's splash damage. So splash damage effects are inherently pretty nice for us. Plus, Remnant is considered splash damage. I use Go with the Flow. It's going to give me more movement speed and gun damage, and I'm mainly when I'm mobbing using the Cryo Dark Army for some extra crowd control, and then 2 points into Trust in Yourself for, once again, additional reload speed and more weapon swap speed. This plus Alacrity gives you a ton of weapon swap speed. Shouldn't be an issue. And then lastly, we have the green tree. Personal space is just for us. The drones don't inherit this, so mainly just for us to get some extra lifesteal and some extra damage when we are shooting our gun. What we are going to pick up is Arms Deal. It gives us splash damage reduction and more splash damage, as I just explained, is pretty good. But we're mainly here for Mindfulness, which is going to give us that ridiculous amount of movement speed to give us all that stacking gun damage. Guys, that's going to do it for this video. I know it's been a while since I made any Borderlands 3 build videos. Pretty fun to come back to and make one. I do kind of want to update some of my Borderlands 3 builds and guides before Borderlands 4 comes out, just because I know that a lot of people are probably going to be feeling the same way as me and getting pretty hyped for Borderlands 4 and craving some Borderlands action and diving back into Borderlands 3 to kill time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Take care. Peace.